can't believe it. It's amazing how time flies by these days. All those summer moments I had have now officially come and gone. From visiting my family up in the Northeast, to playing the golf courses that I never thought I would play on, to going to Six Flags New England and Great Adventure, and last but not least, to going to BronyCon. They are now gone, and the fall season has officially begun. And not only has the fall season begun, but month of Macabre as well. And with that, I say, let's bring this freak show back from the dead. Hello all you freaks out there on the internet, it is I, the Adelaide Brony, FritzRolle732, and in this episode, we got Truth Be Told, written by Scribbler. Now, fun fact about Truth Be Told before we head down to story details, Truth Be Told was actually the very first fanfic that the Lost Narrator did a collaborative project on in her entire channel. Before Silent Ponyville, before Rainbow Factory, before Friendship Test, before The Tale of the Lost Narrator, this was the first big project that Lost did for Month of Macabre back in 2014. And I gotta say, it turned out very great the first time I watched it. And when I told Lost this, she told me all about her experience. And if you guys don't believe me, check this out. What was it like doing Truth Be Told?
Oh, Truth Be Told?
Yes.
Gosh, that was such a long time ago.
I did write it too. Because it wasn't the only thing you were doing.
It wasn't, no. I was actually doing Truth Be Told and Something Sweet to Bite at the same time. I was the editor for that one.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Damn near killed him.
Yeah, it damn near killed me, but it was probably one of the most fun that I had on a project, especially because it was like one of the bigger projects I had done with that big of a cast.
The fact that I'm sitting right beside her already.
Yeah, I was. I mean, it worked out. So yeah, I would say it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. That is right. Not only was the Lost Narrator busy doing Truth Be Told, but she was also busy editing for Emogak's project to Something Sweet to Bite, which is another fic that I plan to do a review on in the future. But for now, let's get down to the story details of Truth Be Told. Basically what this entire story is about, you guys, is where Pinkie Pie starts to grow a little lump on her neck. And so when she went to the doctor to get it off, it turned out to be brutally painful for her, which to the doctor was rather strange. But luckily it was out and everything's fine, right? Wrong. In fact, that wasn't the only strange thing about it. What was strange was the fact of what came out of the lump. It was actually spewing black liquid instead of blood. And instead of it going down and being gone, instead it actually grew bigger and bigger. So she had to go to the hospital. And as this is going on, we start to see a black cloud or some type of entity of darkness like emerge out of Equestria. And this is the part where strange and random things start happening in the story, you guys. And what happens is that when Ditsy Do starts coming close to the entity, we start to hear a huge scream from her, and she's attacked by the entity. However, we don't know like what happens to her or what goes on. We just hear this loud scream, which funny enough turned out to be one of the most iconic screams that Lost has ever made. And because of this scream, she later used it into her Silent Ponyville 2 Redux reading, which I gotta say was really interesting. And it brings back some horror nostalgia, if you ask me. Well, at least in the pony community, that is. Not in general, but whatever. Anyways, so then afterwards, Pinkie's in the hospital and she starts seeing things differently, and her personality starts to change as well. And she starts to think that her eyes are purple even though they are blue, and all of a sudden she's like, gotcha. And at first it starts off as a calm and just a funny gag and stuff, but then we start to realize that this is all too real. And so after we get that whole scene, we head back to the scene of Ponyville and we start to see Ditsy Do again, but wasn't she just attacked by the entity? And also, wait, she's now called Derpy? Uh-oh. Something's not right. And all of a sudden we start to see that black entity approach to Big Mac. Oh gosh. And then all of a sudden the screen just cuts to black like nothing happened and stuff. And let me tell you guys, when I first started encountering this story, let's just say that the fates of the characters was really the most confusing thing ever. Like, I could not tell, like, what happens. Like, are the characters dead, or are they disappearing? Like, what is happening? Like, I was so confused. But luckily, when I was at BronyCon, I luckily got the chance to ask Scribbler, like, what happens to the fate of the characters? Like, it's all confusing and stuff. And then I get this answer.
I gotta say, I do like the story, but there were some confusing moments because it's hard to tell, like, what happens to the characters. Like,
it's meant to be ambiguous.
Oh.
In my head, they all died and got reborn as G1 parents because G1
Yeah.
is superior.
yeah. Like, because with the cake twins, like, you know, and also that scene, and
Babies
also
are more
the...
innocent. They can tell what's going on. Babies are pets.
all
Always
right.
pay attention when the cats are going up right in the corner.
And that is right, you guys. The characters' fates in this story are actually meant to be ambiguous. And when I actually first encountered this fic, I was actually really confused by the fact of why the fates of the characters are, like, ambiguous or, like, illogical and stuff. But now, after hearing it from Scribbler's point of view and looking back on the story, it actually makes a lot of sense. Because the thing is, and spoiler alert, the story's antagonist is the entity of a fanfic writer, and fanfic writers tend to be the most imaginative and creative and random people on the internet. And when it comes to the genre of horror, a character's fate left ambiguous actually makes a lot of sense because the antagonist is a fanfic writer. You could either die, you could either change, or you could survive, or better yet, leave things ambiguous. So I gotta say, kudos to Scribbler for adding that effect right there. And I think that's the goal that Scribbler was trying to go for in writing this fic. Or at least in my point of view, that is. I don't know. But anyway, so going forward to the story, we start to see Ditsy Doo changed to Derpy, and Big Matt's fate is unknown, as well as the Cake Twins and Mr. and Mrs. Cake. However, as for our main characters, we start to know, like, what happens to them. And we soon realize that towards the end of the story, they are reincarnated into Lauren Faust's OG designs. Like, Fluttershy no longer has her wings, Twilight has changed color, Pinkie Pie has now turned into Surprise, which is what that lump was, you guys. That lump that she was getting was actually wings trying to spurt out of her skin. And let me tell you, the scene that I just saw while watching the fanfic reading to the story was rather really disturbing. Luckily, there's a setting on YouTube where you get to see, like, what happens next when you point your mouse onto a time code and stuff and whatever. Good thing there's that. Otherwise, if I saw this blind, I probably would have wet myself. But anyway, so yeah, all this crazy stuff starts to happen, and so Pinkie Pie turns into the G1 Pegasus Surprise, and then Rainbow Dash is now turned into Firefly. And as for Applejack and Rarity, they rarely changed. I mean, Rarity just needs more diamonds, and then as for Applejack, the only thing she needed to do was remove her hat. And more apples on her butt, but whatever. So with that, here are my overall thoughts, you guys, about this story. The story was rather random and confusing and just hard to keep up. When I first watched the fanfic reading of it, like, I was following along to what was happening, it's just the character's fate was the most confusing part, and that's where the story is like, wait, where do we go from here? Like, what happens to everybody else and all that? And also, we never get the chance to see the scene where the main six actually do change. That's also another thing. But I think I know the reason why Scribbler decided to cut that part out is because I think that would have taken the story a lot more further, and I think it would have been a little bit unnecessary, but at the same time, it still would have been a fun scene to check out, but whatever. We get what we get, and we don't get upset. And also, since this was written by Scribbler, the writing of the story itself was good as well, so. And overall, I just really enjoyed the heck out of this story when I first read it. It's just from a first-time experience, the characters' fates were just the most confusing parts. But now that I understand why the characters' fates are like that and why the characters' fates are ambiguous and why it's meant to be that way, it actually makes a lot of sense because think about it. The antagonist is a fanfic writer, and fanfic writers tend to be the most random and imaginative people on the internet. And so when it comes to horror, leaving a character's fates tend to be the most random thing. So it does make sense. So overall, and Scribbler, if you're watching this, I know I told you before back at BronyCon, I gave the story a 3.25 out of 5, but the thing is, that was after a first time experience. Now actually being more affiliated with the story and understanding more details about it, I am going to boost the score up for you, Scribbler, and I give this story a 3.5 out of 5. It is just as good as Rainbow Factory, you guys, and I encourage you guys to check out. So with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed my review to Truth Be Told. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and if you guys have read the story yourselves, click down your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, be sure to subscribe to my channel, check out the rest of my MLP Grimdark Fanfic review series as well as the latest episode. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at FritzRolle732. Click on the bell, all as well. And one last thing before I head out, you guys. Lost Narrator and Obab Scribbler, thank you guys so much for everything that you've done for this entire community and for all the work that you've done for the Brony fandom. I truly love and admire your work, and if it wasn't for you guys, this whole entire series would have never been possible, and I would have never had a love for Grimdark. And also for inspiring me to become a voice actor. It was because of you guys, as well as all the other talented voice actors in the Brony fandom, that allowed me to have the opportunity to do my very first voice acting job. It was because of you guys, and I thank you guys so much for that. And for all you guys watching, please subscribe to them as well. They are good at what they do, and they are amazing. And again, Lost and Obab Scribbler, it was a pleasure getting the chance to interview with you guys while I was at BronyCon. It was so much fun. Thank you guys so much. So everyone, I told you guys the story about Truth Be Told, but in the next episode, I get to tell you guys the story as to why I stopped watching My Little Pony. And it's not because the series is going to end this Saturday, it's because there's a lot of shit that goes on into this show that it just drives you crazy. But until then, that's a wrap, everyone. See ya!
Pointless to analyze.